7 o'clock now, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote upon each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, which tonight we're down 1 member, you must inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing. Petitioners shall do their best to limit presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in a public hearing shall do their best to limit comments to 3 minutes. All right, thank you. First roll call, as you can see, we've got everyone here except the new board member, which I'm not sure his name, but
Mr. Kurelik.
Mr. Kurelik. We'll meet him next month, hopefully. Approval of minutes for September 8th, 2022. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Reddy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. There's no old or unfinished business that I know of, so we'll move to the first case of new business, case number 22-10-30. Mr. Murphy, whenever you're ready.
Since the arrival of COVID, the petitioners operated an outdoor dining area, and there's a space or courtyard, if you will, between the building and the public sidewalk. And the petitioner has utilized that area for outdoor service and entertainment, again, since the arrival of COVID. And they more recently have obtained all the necessary approvals with regard to their liquor license from the City Commission, and they also did receive site plan and special land use approval from the Planning Commission. One of the contingencies of the Planning Commission's approval is that they obtain the necessary variances from the board this evening. So you'll notice on the site plan that there's what we refer to as an accessory parking lot, and that is on a series of them on the south side of the alley. And if you're able to zoom in a little bit more, I think that'll provide us with some clarity. And the accessory parking lots are located in the city's one-family residential zoning district, and that's why they're regarded as accessory parking lots. That's a type of use that is a special land use in the one-family residential zoning district. And near the intersection along the side street, Prairie, is a garden. And there are 3 different types of gardens in the zoning ordinance, and there are sets of regulations associated with each of them. This most closely associates with what we regard under the ordinance as a community garden. And that's typically a garden that's operated by a business or a group of individuals for growing and harvesting crops for consumption on site. And the petitioner has noted to us that they do in fact own that property, but they do not know who maintains that somewhat garden, if you will. They do not have a license agreement. They don't have any type of agreement with any group that operates the garden. It just kind of organically happens, if you will. But we do treat it as most closely associated with a market garden. And market gardens are neither a permitted nor special land use in the one-family residential zoning district. So as part of the Planning Commission's contingency of approval, they are requiring the petitioner to obtain a use variance in order to have that type of garden at this location, this particular zoning district. The building, commercial building that fronts along 13 Mile Road also, it contains 3 tenants. There's a vacant former medical retailer, there's a personal service salon, and of course the restaurant. And if we review the parking that's required currently for all of those uses, the existing restaurant, not including the outdoor area which they're asking for the parking variance today, it requires 38 parking spaces in and of itself. The vacant retail space 4, and the salon 6, so for a total of 48. And there are 8 parking spaces right behind the building, and then there are a total of 31 which are in the accessory parking lots on the south side of the alley. So there are a total available of 39. So it's currently deficient. And the additional floor area dedicated to the outdoor dining, again, between the building and the sidewalk, that space requires an additional 26 parking spaces. That area requires an additional 26 parking spaces in order to utilize it for outdoor service. So the petitioner, obviously, that goes again far and above and beyond what's available for parking. So they're here in front of you tonight to seek a variance from that parking standard in order to continue to utilize it essentially as they have been in the last 2 years. And we did not receive any written communication for the board for this evening.
Thank you. Is there any questions, Mr. Clapp?
Mr. Murphy, that garden in the southeast corner, if that was lawn or concrete, would that be a non-issue?
Yes, if it was standard landscaping, or as you said, a lawn, grass, no, it would not be. It would be standard landscaping, which would be permissible.
Not that the neighbor to the south would like it, but could they extend that parking into that side yard setback? Could they pick up 1 or 2 spaces if they wanted to?
If they went through the approval process, accessory parking lots in the one-family residential zoning district are one of the only uses that require not only the planning commission's approval, but also the city commission's approval. So they could possibly go through that 2-step process in order to expand the parking lot further towards Prairie and further within the front yard setback of that adjacent dwelling. Yes, they could.
And then one last question. I think the applicant's letter mentioned 7 additional parking spaces. I believe that's to the east across Prairie. They mentioned a different number that I believe in the application, in the letter they submitted. They said, earlier this year, Raymond acquired 7 additional parking spaces across Prairie Street, which are reflected on the attached memorandum of lease. Does the city not recognize those as parking spaces? Or am I missing something?
Let's have the petitioner speak to that
Okay.
effect, and then if we once it's opened up for questions for them, and then we can have some further conversation. But I'll let them clarify that.
Thank you.
Mr. Kip?
This is more just out of curiosity. Did that community garden just come up during plan review? Was that how it was noticed and when it was at the planning commission, or do you have any idea how it came about that this even got noticed?
I don't know how long it's been there. If you look at Google Street View and do a variety of years further back, it's been there a while.
Yeah.
It was not illustrated on the original approval to create that accessory parking lot. So at some point, it sprouted, if you will. I don't know how long it's been there, but when we went out to do site inspection before it went to the planning commission, we noticed that, and we thought, we asked the petitioner about the use and care of it, and they said, we don't know who takes care of it. And so the comment, the planning commission's comment was, well, do you plan on taking care of it if it's yours? And the comment was, well, we don't care either way. So the comment is, if you want to keep it, you got to get an approval.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Go ahead, Mr. Muller.
If we waive the parking requirement for this particular business, with a vacancy being there, will that mean they automatically have to come before us for waiving parking requirements as well?
No, if it's the same use, a retailer or something similar in parking, they would not. They would receive that credit, if you will.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I guess just to clarify that a little further, but if it was a more parking intensive use, then they would have to come back.
Correct. Let's say
Okay.
the restaurant wanted to expand or a different restaurant wanted to go in, and that would necessitate that tenant space requiring its own separate variance. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, the petitioner may come forward and present their case. State their name.
Good evening. My name is Hans Renschop. I'm an attorney with Atkinson, Allen, and Renschop. With me tonight is Greg Vernon and Harold Sullivan, who are the operators of Edo Restaurant. As Mr. Murphy mentioned, he did a good job of summarizing the situation. We are seeking 2 variances tonight. The first one is for parking, and the second one is for the community garden. Starting question is what parking is required. My letter frames the question as a waiver of 28 of the required 63 parking. The planning department's review frames it as 35 of 74. As I got into the nuts and bolts of this, I think the more accurate depiction is 22 of requesting waiver of 22 of 72 spaces. And of course, how do I get there? If I could get the first slide, please. Sorry, next one up, please. So, as the city mentioned, they've assigned 38 parking spots to the Edo restaurant based upon the square footage, and a 65 square feet equals 1 parking spot. They've also identified 26 to Edo's outdoor cafe, and 6 to Vibe Spa, and 4 to Art Accents, for a total of 74 required spaces. Next slide, please. Upon reviewing the situation, we note that Edo Ramen it should be under the ordinance 770.70D, states that the outdoor service is combined with parking. So that actually, when you do that and round the numbers, you're actually 1 space less. Not a big deal, but we're down to 73 on that. The other 2 are the 6 for Vibe Spa and 4 for Art Accents is also correct. Next slide, please. The zoning ordinance further provides that under 770-105E4, if you have a fraction, you're supposed to round the parking up, which makes sense, so you have enough parking spaces. However, more to that point, it seems like if you add all those entities up and then round it up would be the appropriate way to do it. And when you come to that, you actually come to 72 places. That's spaces. That's how I got to the 72. Next slide, yeah, okay. So the city's calculation of available parking was 8 spaces behind the building and 31 spaces south of the alley, for a total of 39 spaces. Next slide, please. When we went out to observe it, see, it was pretty much correct, but a few clarifications. There are 8 spaces behind the building. There are 10 spaces immediately behind the building across the alley. There's an additional 11 spaces to the west. There's 1 space that doesn't really show up well. It's between the 2 parking lots, but there actually is a parking spot there when you go in to see it. Then there are 10 spaces associated with what they refer to as a frame shop, which is the business at the end. It has 3 to the south and then another 7 to the east. And then the 11 parking places east of Prairie Street, south of the alley, which the underlying owner of the multi-unit tenant building that Edo is in actually owns as well. And that's, in my letter, the 7 places that we get. So in total, by doing that number, we have 50 spaces in total. So if we take the 72 and the 50, that's how I get to 21. Next slide, please. Additionally, just, I know it doesn't go to the ordinance, but so you're aware, this is an unusual layout. If you've been to the site, you probably, especially recently, you've seen that Consumers has it really torn up, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on out there. But there are other spaces there. You know, collectively, there's 15 spaces east of Prairie, north of the alley, which used to be a grass strip. Then there was Consumers has got all their vehicles parked there, and sort of hard to see there. There's also 10 spaces east of Prairie Street, south of the alley, additionally further past the ones that are owned by the same landlord. And then there's probably a few more spaces up by the Consumers spot. Next slide, please. So this is obviously the site plan of the building. You can see the 8 behind the building, the 10 and 10, and that, like I said, that very center section is actually a spot there, and then 7 over there. And then again, across Prairie Street to the east, the southern part is under the same ownership landlord, and those where we have additional spaces there. And I think that's those spaces over there, 11 in total, I believe, is where the city and our numbers are off. But when you include those in, as indicated in my letter, we have the rights to use it, that's where it comes in. So that's how we got to the parking numbers, so to speak. Now the next question, of course, is do we meet the variance requirements? Obviously, there's certain criteria that need to be satisfied. First, do the restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for permitted purposes? Well, the property was already underparked, as Mr. Murphy said, long before we added the patio. It would not be used for a restaurant if we comply with the parking as is. The patio itself requires additional 25 more parking spaces. But you have to understand that building's been there since the 60s. The restaurant there's been a restaurant there for 22 years, and Ito's had its patio out there for 2+ years, and there has been no complaints from parking, at least it was not referenced to the Planning Commission, otherwise we're aware of. So parking doesn't seem to be a problem out there. So like I said, the parking strictly enforced would make it impossible to use the building as a restaurant, and would preclude the use of the patio. And the next question was, will the variance do substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners in the district, or will a lesser variance work? Well, obviously the variance will do substantial justice to the property owner, in that's what they've been doing for at least the last 2 years plus, and before that is the building. The nature in the area in terms of the layout is kind of unusual. Obviously, this is kind of like a buffer strip between 13 Mile, and they've got a little mixed-use area and then residential. As noted, it would preclude the use of the building. And I did hear during public comment at the Planning Commission, there was really no objection. The other person that was here on that said, this is fine. We've not had any problems there. The third criteria is it's a plight of the landowner due to unique circumstances of the property. Again, it's kind of a weird layout, and so I would argue that it is, and that U-shape and the way it's designed makes it somewhat unique. Has the large hardship been created by the person presently having interest in the property? No, not in terms of the being underparked in terms of the restaurant itself. Yes, I will. Admittedly, adding the patio did increase the nonconformity, does increase the nonconformity. But again, there's been no problems. There's been no complaints. There's been no issues of parking. They've had, up until this year, a very successful business at that location, and it's been good. It's worked well. As I mentioned, there are some other items to consider. There are roughly additional 25 spaces across Prairie Street, and of course that's not including on-street parking as well. The one Art Accents frame shop is open by appointment only, and obviously after hours, so they don't have a problem with people parking there during the evenings. So we're we're looking for a variance from the parking requirements for this particular, seeking variance of the 22 from the 72, in that there's been no problems in the last 2.5 years and nothing's really changed. Moving on to the garden feature. Obviously, we're also seeking a variance for the community garden. By way of background, Edo did not plant it, did not take produce from it, does not manage it, and has no objection to it. As Mr. Murphy correctly pointed out, it sort of sprouted up on its own. Again, there's standards, of course, for a variance. By the way, the Planning Commission requested that we come to you for a variance, and we were willing to do so, of course, for it. The first requirement is the applicant show that the property could not reasonably be used for purposes permitted in that zone. I would argue that the garden is kind of a permitted purpose. It's what's landscaping, what's not landscaping. I guess that's a matter of opinion. I think it's worth noting that the Planning Commission seemed to think that way too. I mean, it could be grass, it could be pavement, but it's a garden. It doesn't have any real problem with it. I would argue it's practical landscaping. Second, show that the appeal results from unique circumstances peculiar to the property and not from general neighborhood conditions. Again, that U layout of parking sort of creates that nice little spot and makes it unique for that. The area is roughly 40 feet by 20 feet, and it is definitely unique to the area. So, third, that it showed that the use requested by the variance would not alter the essential character. Well, it's obviously a community garden. The community wants it, so I assume that's part of the character of the neighborhood. Fourth, it showed that the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. I question whether community garden is a hardship, but it was not created by Ito. And finally, show that the use will preserve a substantial property possessed by other property owners in the same zone. I guess the only real preservation would be good neighbor relations. Ito is willing to pull out that garden. We'd rather not. The People like it. We don't want to upset our neighbors, but if that's what the city wants, we will do it, comply. So in conclusion, we're seeking the variances for the parking, 22 of the required 72 places, and additional to allow the community garden to continue. And I'm welcome to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner?
My
Susan?
question's for Mr. Murphy. If they're only requesting 22 and the city's saying you need 35, what does that do for them if we just grant 22?
Well, the variance is noticed for the amount that staff did determine. I would take the petitioner's comments under consideration, as you always do, in your determination and your analysis of any type of practical hardship that they feel, or if they determine they think it's less in theory and based on the comments that were provided. But I would encourage the board to continue with the variance request as presented by staff, as listed.
All right. Any questions?
Another question for the petitioner. You mentioned somewhere in here that you're putting in a bike rack.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of customers that come from the neighborhoods behind you that can walk there and can ride their bikes there?
I'll defer to my clients on that. Do you have any?
We do. It's neighborhoods all around us, yes, so that is correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Reddy.
So have you been keeping track of the utilization of the parking currently? I drove by at dinner time and there were plenty of spots available. So when you say that, you know, that sounds reasonable, but is there any data for?
I'm not aware of any data.
Over the past, since April, consumer energy's.
You can come to the mic real quick at this speak.
Consumer energy's been in our parking lot in our area since April, so it's really been hard to judge, and they're still there, and it's really been hurting our business immensely there. So we have not done any checking or like you asked. So
More so on a follow-up to that. Pre-construction, say last year when you had the seasonal cafe up, how was business? Was it utilizing all the parking, or was it?
I would say we were still in COVID protocol, so there were everyone was sitting outside as opposed to inside. So, you know, just being safe and social distancing. So we never had any issues or problems with parking at all. So.
Do you know if any of the other tenants were complaining about parking?
No one ever said anything to us about it at all. So. Yeah.
Mr. Yevon, I think.
I was actually just going to extend that backwards and say pre-COVID.
Yeah.
How was the parking situation? Because you were short even without the exterior, the patio. So
correct. Yeah, we never have felt any. Like I said, no complaints. No one never had any issues with the parking lot at all.
You've spoken with your neighbors, correct?
We have, yes. And like I said, some of the our neighbors, even down the alley, said you could use our spaces anytime you want to. You know, most of them close early. By the time we open, which is 4 o'clock, most of the shops down there are closed. So able to utilize them if they want to walk a block or two. There's more parking that we even show on that aspect.
Okay. Did you have a question, Mr. Moore? No, I saw your hand starting to go. Mr. Clay.
I guess back to the 7 spaces you mentioned earlier. So it shows 11 up there, but you mentioned 7.
Yes.
I'd also like to challenge, are those required spaces for that building?
No, so
the
the
east.
7 to the, so the 11 spots to the east of Prairie on the south side, those are under the same ownership as the whole Edo
Okay.
complex.
Okay.
And as part of the lease that was entered into for leasing Edo's space, that they were given a percentage of that parking spots. Now,
I see.
for purposes of the overall calculations here, you can count all 11, but there were 7 were supposed to be given for Edo's.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions? No.
Yeah, about those other parking spaces, what is in the building that they're behind? I mean, I think that the question was, are they part of the calculation for that building? Is that what you were asking?
But it appears that they're not owned by that building.
They're not owned by that building, and there isn't actually a building there right now. It's a
Yeah.
vacant lot.
Oh, okay, all right.
In fact, there's parking that's to the north of the alley. There's parking there too, which seems to go into nowhere. But-
Probably why I can't picture what's in that building.
Yeah. Well, right now there's a lot of trucks on that block. So
Right, there's a lot of construction over there in general right now. Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions for the petitioner? All right. Just to remind you, we're down one board member. So since it has a use variance, that variance would need to have 6 affirmative votes. So after public comment, I'll ask if you want to proceed or delay 1 month for possible full board, or maybe not.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll open public comment. Please come forward if there's anyone to speak. All right, going once, twice. Looks like no one wants to speak public comment regarding this. Would you like us to go forward, or would you like us to?
We'd like you to move forward if you would,
Okay,
please.
we'll pull to this side of the board. Any discussion and/or motions? Mr. Clapp.
Well, maybe we take them one at a time.
That's fine.
So I will make a motion to approve the use variance for the garden.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Gavin? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Clapp.
I think that garden's been in existence for some time, and the applicant could do something else with that. They could put lawn there, they could maybe park that, but it seems to be a benefit for the neighborhood and is taken care of by the neighborhood. So no detrimental impact, and let's keep it in existence. So I see no use to change that. No need to change that.
Mr. Gavin, anything to add?
Not really. I mean, it's clearly in use by the community there. I looked up the definitions we have in our zoning ordinance, and I agree with staff's classification of it. It's the best fit, but I mean, realistically, it seems like it's just a personal garden for just a bunch of people in the area, and I don't want to deny them that if everybody's happy. There's no reason to. It looks good, so I think it's a good use variance to approve.
Is there any other comments? No, I too agree with your statements, and I always love community gardens. It shows how much the community around it really is involved with each other, as well as the spaces around themselves, and it's a good positive use of what would be normally lawn. So I'm definitely all for it. All right. If there's no other comments, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the variance passes unanimously. Now we have the other variance. Is there any comments or motions? Mr. Moore.
I have another question for the petitioner, if I can.
Okay, real quick, go ahead.
About the other parking spaces, the 11 or 7 that are over on the other side of Prairie, is there any type of signage that directs people to park over there if the lot directly behind the business is full?
That's a good question. I know there are signs south of the building that are specifically reserved for Edo. I don't recall if there's any across the...
Actually, Consumer Energy was to make signs for us, and they did not, but we were planning on making them ourselves for that purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I definitely want to show people that there's more parking, so yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Reddy.
Oh. I just wanted to chime in with my usual public transport comment, which is that there is the 760 runs down 13 Mile, and there's a stop just a block or 2 away from Edo. So that mitigates somewhat the need to drive there.
Mr. Clapp.
I think just one more thing to point out too. I did notice that there's no parking that'd be on the west side of Prairie, which means it'll limit the impact of potential vehicles parking in the subdivision. I think they can park on the east side, but not the west side, if that helps.
Is there any motions? Mr. Gavin.
I'll move to approve the variance as presented by staff,
Is there a second?
just to clarify.
I think Mr. Reddy beat you out on that one. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
I was on the fence about this one coming into the meeting. It just seems like it's a large ask. Even if it's at the 22 that the petitioner's attorney is asking for. But given the layout of the property, it's just a very similar problem to what we have along Woodward. It's just their parking is so limited, you know? And given the fact that we have no written comments, no public comments here tonight, it clearly isn't a use that is, or a parking problem in that area that is affecting, you know, neighboring homeowners. And the fact that all those local businesses kind of close up, and it seems to be working, and the patio is already there. It's in operation. You know, if we were gonna if there were gonna be a problem, we'd already know about it, and then we'd have people here complaining about it. So for that reason, I'm in favor of it. I think it'll do justice to the petitioner. It will do substantial justice to the property owners in the area. It's just a tough. I mean, it's tough to fit parking for basically any business there because it's always going to be tight, just the way the land is laid out. So it's unique circumstances for that property, and they didn't create that problem. That problem existed from when those parcels were laid out. It's just the way it is. So I think for all those reasons that this is a variance that should be granted.
Mr. Reddy, anything to add?
Just that, you know, like we discussed in the past, these formulas were made before the ride-sharing services, and people are also trying to walk and bike more. So I think that mitigates the need for the number of spots.
Yes, sir.
My only concern would be the fact that COVID is not that big an issue to most people anymore. They might be using the restaurant and the exterior like they haven't in the past, so I don't think it's really tested. But I still, because of the fact that it's in a neighborhood and there is all this extra parking, I think I still will go along with it, but I wanted to raise that one concern.
Any other comments? Well, I'll agree. I was on the fence originally until after hearing some of their points of their case, because I'm still concerned about the empty spot that all consumers is parked in right now, preventing that future building, if there was one there, from using the spots behind it. But who knows? Nothing may ever come there. So it's true. They've been living with this even before COVID, and they had the cafe, and it seems to have been working, and there's not been any real cry from the neighborhood. So because it's a unique circumstance in that they open such later after everyone's closed, I think that helps them too. And it's like anything else. If you don't have parking for someone to come visit you, they're just not going to do it if they're coming that mode of transportation. So the water will level out as needed. So I'll go along with this variance as requested. All right, if there's no other comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and best of luck to you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next case number 22-10-31 for 4410 West 13 Mile Road, whenever you are ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This variance pertains to the Judson Center located at 4410 West 13 Mile Road. At their September 13th, 2022 meeting, the Royal Oak Planning Commission granted site plan and special land use approval to renovate the existing facilities and construct a new 33,400 square foot life skills center on site. And one of those contingencies of approval was to receive the appropriate variance request approvals from the Royal Oak Zoning Board of Appeals. The two variance requests pertain to, first, the amount of off-street parking provided, and second, for the width of one of the driveways on site. Parking calculations for the site were performed using the business, administrative, and professional office calculations, which call for one space for every 225 square feet of usable floor area, and also the outpatient medical clinic calculations, which call for one space for every 400 square feet of usable floor area. with no more than one space for each 300 square feet of usable floor area. The parking calculations combined require a total of 225 off-street parking spaces for the entire site. One thing I would like to point out is that the approved site plans do actually provide 179 off-street parking spaces as opposed to the 177 off-street parking spaces as was noted by staff in both the special land use report as well as in this variance report. But this is not an issue, as the Zoning Board of Appeals can still approve variances that are less than what is noted in the report. Therefore, the applicant is seeking a variance to waive 46 of the minimum required 225 off-street parking spaces. As for their second variance request, their approved site plan is providing a new 35-foot wide driveway, which is to provide ingress and egress to the site from Greenfield Road, which will be built on the same, essentially the same place where the existing driveway is. The only difference is now it's being widened. Section 770-109 of the zoning ordinance does limit the maximum width of driveways in non-residential zoning districts to 30 feet. So therefore, the petitioner is seeking a variance to waive 5 feet from the maximum driveway width of 30 feet. Thank you.
All right, is there any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, petitioner may come forward, state your name, and present your case.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay with Stantec. I have a couple team members here with me. Brad, he's our civil engineer, and Lenora's Judson Center CEO, and Steve is here with me from Stantec as an architect for the project.
Hello.
Hi. Regarding the number of parking spaces and the variance for that, point A, that this chapter's restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. Our first point is that the number of parking spaces per the zoning ordinance does not reflect the program's intent. They are going to increase the amount of clients they serve, but a large portion of their clients are dropped off due to the characteristics of the services that they provide here. So a lot of the clients are dropped off by their parents and receive services. They're not staying on site. The estimate for actual number of parking spaces related to clients being on site is somewhere between 10 to 15 for the main building, and approximately 15 would be getting counseling or exam services in the clinic at one time. Regarding the staff that's required, the estimate is around 135 staff once phase 2 has been completely implemented. However, a lot of the staff as well perform services off-site or also go to other campuses during the day. So our need is approximately 90 to 100 at peak time for staff to be parked on site. So we're somewhere around 130 to 140 needed spaces based on the actual program and use and intent by clients in our space. So just wanted to point out that there is kind of a discrepancy there between what would be, say, written per exact letter in the zoning ordinance and how our client uses their space. Regarding item B, that the variance would do substantial justice to the applicant as well as to other property owners in the district, and a lesser relaxation than that requested would not give substantial relief to the owner of the property or be more consistent with justice to other property owners. The variance would allow for an appropriately sized sensory garden and play area to support our program, which will be accessible from the building without crossing the parking lot, which makes the site a safer place for the users. The variance significantly improves drop-off safety for special needs children by creating designated drop-off lanes adjacent to the building, and that's separated from staff parking, so we're eliminating that crossover. And the proposed parking layout provides safer access for the site for vehicles by placing, although internally, at the perimeter of our site as well. So we've really worked to align our site with our clients' needs. Item C, that the plight to the landowner is due to the unique circumstances of the property. To meet the needs for the calculated parking requirement, they'd basically have to move, which would not be financially feasible. They've been here for almost 100 years. Currently it's at 98, and they want to stay at the site and provide the services here to fulfill that need for this community. And then item D, the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. Again, they'd have to move the program to other new locations, but we do feel that the site as proposed is creating a blend of garden spaces and outdoor program spaces that are integral to the program and the needs of their client, and the parking need is less for our client and their proposed program. Thank you. And then I'm going to invite Brad up to talk about the second item on the list.
Good evening, Brad Brickle from Noack and Frous. Yeah, with respect to the width variance, it's kind of unique because the way the ordinance reads, it's actually measured the width along the property line, okay, where it makes that difficult, and we can either pull up a plan or look at this. The proximity of the property line to the back of curb is significantly closer, so where the actual measurement is essentially like midpoint to midpoint of the radii. So the actual driveway is only 24 feet. I guess I wanted to make that clear. So we're not asking for a 35-foot wide driveway. It just happens to be, as you can see, it flares out at the property line in the center of the radius. It happens to be 35 feet. So we're only asking for a 24-foot wide drive aisle. So nothing unique. It's just unfortunately, where the measurement's being taken place at is all. So, any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
And then I don't have any other additional comments related to that.
Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Clapp?
I guess one question, or more of an observation. It looks like you eliminated, I believe in the past, or per the recent aerials, there's drives along Springer too, correct? But those have been shut off?
We are proposing eliminating that as part of the phase one, actually.
No, that's great. That seems to make it safer for the residential community beyond too. So the drive's a little bit wider, but it's a trade-off. You're closing that one off and making this one just a touch wider.
Yep.
Well, and that really is the intent for the development of the site, is that everything is internalized now. As you'll hear in a moment, there's some concern about parking overflow on the Springer as it currently exists, and every effort has been made to pull all the activities that happen on the Judson site within the Judson site. So appropriate parking is going to be assigned to those two buildings at the north edge of the site. We call them Unit 2 and Unit 3. And then really severing any activity out to Springer by, again, providing that parking and then flipping the entrances to those buildings from the south. What you see here is a connection, sidewalk connection up to Springer. And one of the things that we came away from the Plan Commission was that those sidewalks should be eliminated, just to really push that internal connection.
I did send a note back to the city saying, please confirm these are the sections you'd like eliminated, but we are willing to eliminate those two sidewalk connections to the property.
Overall, I really like the plan, how it's been thought out and whatnot. And as you alluded to, trying to separate that out from Springer so it is more internalized, and actually probably your clients will enjoy that more privacy with that. I'm assuming, how much in the way of staff's on those two outbuildings? Is there enough parking for the staff and whomever would be involved with those buildings that you guys know of?
We are utilizing some of the larger staff area on the east side of the property for staff, and we have a sidewalk access for them to get to those buildings for their use during the day.
So staff will know that they should be using that area, not over by there.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that would help alleviate some concerns in the neighborhood, knowing that. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? All right. As said before, we don't have a full board. We're down one person. So after public comment, please let us know if you'd like us to go forward or delay for 1 month.
Okay, thank you.
Or we might not have a full board again.
Gotcha.
All right. So we'll open up public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes each.
Can you shrink the drawing so we can see the whole drawing while it's on the board rather than just part of it?
Thank you.
And I have a handout. May I give it to you, Julie?
Sure.
Just a copy of the specific code that I'm referring to.
Thank you.
I'm sure you know what exact notes.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tim Harmon. I live on Yorba Linda. My property abuts the Judson Center property. The zoning rules are meant to be followed. If I was remodeling or expanding my house and needed a variance, but I didn't submit an electrical plan as required by code, the site plan would have been stopped by planning. Our contention is that Judson should be held to the same type of expectations. As you hear our comments tonight, you're going to hear that all of us, from all of our neighbors, we understand that they have the right to use the property the way they want to, as long as it's within the zoning codes. We have the right as homeowners to be able to, we should be able to expect to use our property the way it's meant for our home, for peace, for joy, for harmonious activity with our families. As you can see, in the handout that I gave you, Section 770.12 requires specific information to be submitted to the city when the application is made. Specifically, if I can ask you to look at Part 3, it's highlighted, supplemental information requirements. Part 1 says, the following supplemental information shall be submitted in connection with all site plan applications for non-residential uses. It goes on to say a written business plan, which shall be narrative in or other format describing all uses and business activities be undertaken on the premises, unquote. Perhaps this should have been stopped with planning because there wasn't a business plan submitted. Perhaps planning felt like they didn't need one, but you almost have to have one because there's no way without it that you'd be able to tell how many parking places are required. The only information we have is the opinion of the applicant. For example, what are the hours of operation? What days of the week are they open? How are patient appointments scheduled? How many patients will they be seeing each day in each of the buildings? Currently, the Judson website says their outpatient clinics perform primary care such as sport physicals, immunizations, and minor outpatient procedures. This is brand new for Judson and brand new for this location. In fact, their existing Warren outpatient clinic is not even operated by them, but by an outside medical practice. But you don't know that because you don't have a business plan outlining what type of business they're doing. There's a big difference in the needs between behavioral counseling and the new primary care outpatient clinic they're going to be putting on the property. They're adding a 33,000 square foot building to the property. How many patients or clients are expected to be in that 33,000 square foot building? Finally, I guess the bottom line is without a required business plan, the only way you can make a logical decision on the parking is to refer to 770.107. Without that, you can't make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Hi there, my name's Christine Mueller. I grew up at the corner of Springer and Yorba Linda, and my parents still live there, and I'm here on their behalf tonight. I was at the Planning Commission meeting. I spoke there as well, and I understand that it's their opinion that the design team, if they follow the codes, that the project would meet the criteria and would be harmonious to the environment. I am only asking that the Zoning Board of Appeals deny Judson's request for a variance regarding the number of off-street parking spaces. Referring to the memo that was prepared by the Planning Commission at the top of page 3, we talked about less than 225 off-street parking spaces. The conditionally approved plan provides, as we know now, 179 off-street parking spaces. Therefore, they're seeking a variance of 46 of the required parking spaces. I believe on the site plan, they only show 8 off-street parking spaces listed for the medical office when the current zoning requirements would call for 10. I think there's also been some back and forth on whether or not this is a medical clinic or a medical office. I went through the zoning ordinance myself, and because there's no ambulance or delivery area, it appears to me that this is a medical office, which would actually require 20 parking spaces and not 8. So I do ask you to look at that as well. Judson has also not mentioned that they have company vehicles already parked on site. There's at least 9 other vehicles, so that's 9 parking spots that could be taken up every day, further reducing the number of parking spaces available. So I know the numbers kind of moved around. I didn't do the math really well on the fly, but I believe we're down to about 24 to 30 available spaces each day for patients, parents, visitors, business vendors, and outsourced medical professionals. The zoning codes are required both for the success of Judson's project and for the surrounding area. We know that Springer is the only street, because of the way that this is set up at 13 and Greenfield, Springer is the only street available for off-street parking. We know from in the past, cars will again be parked along both sides of that street and then onto Yorba Linda. We know this because they previously operated those buildings as foster care homes. Without ample parking available on the campus, that on-street overflow parking will be a nuisance and potentially dangerous situation to the residents and the visitors of Judson who will seek to park there. Their plans for reserving a greater portion of the site for sensory gardens and walking paths and recreational areas is a problem created by Judson, and Judson should revise their plans to meet the codes. Getting it wrong based on their guess unduly burdens the residents. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Neil Drillich. I live on Yorba Linda, and since this is all about following the zoning code, a very important one needs to be discussed, and it is important, and it is about a part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. What's not mentioned in the plan or the memorandum is that according to code, barrier-free or handicapped spaces are in addition to conventional spaces. Please look at the highlighted sections of the handout I gave you, and I'll read it as well. Section 770-108, barrier-free parking requirements, specifically the second sentence reads, required barrier-free parking spaces shall be in addition to those required under section 770-107. What that means is that the actual requirement for parking on this site is 225 conventional parking spaces plus the 11 barrier-free parking spaces for a total of 236. So while they're requesting a variance of 48 spaces, the actual variance they require is 59 spaces. Of the barrier-free spaces, do we know how many are van accessible? Regular barrier-free spaces require a 5-foot wide aisle for access. However, a van space requires an 8-foot wide aisle equivalent to an additional parking space. In the letter provided by the CEO of the Judson Center, she states that the Judson helps those with developmental disabilities, severe emotional impairments, and autism spectrum disorder. The CEO goes on to say that our services focus on primarily children and young adults with developmental disabilities who do not drive. It would appear that the Judson Center wants us to believe that the parents of patients with developmental disabilities, severe emotional impairments, and those on the autism spectrum will simply drop off their patients and leave, or their children and leave. Most of the parents or caregivers will have to park to assist the patient into the building. Unless the appointment is all day, many of the cars will remain in the parking lot until their child or young adult is finished. I don't believe any of us would drive up and leave a disabled child and be unsupervised and just drive away. Thank you for your time and protecting those with disabilities.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shalene Moore, and I live on Yorba Linda. My house abuts the Judson property. Off-street loading spaces, those pesky codes. Just as barrier-free parking was forgotten, here's another one. There's no mention of loading spaces on the site plan or in the memorandum. Today, everything is delivered by UPS, FedEx, Amazon, or even Allied Eagle, one of the Judson Center suppliers. If there is an off-street loading for those trucks to stop, then they will park on the streets, block the driveway, or take up multiple parking spaces. That is the very reason off-street loading spaces are required in the code. In the printout that I gave you, you will see that the chart in 770-110 dictates how many off-street loading spaces are required. It also shows the amount of space required for the delivery trucks to be able to unload in. Such loading and unloading space shall be an area 12 feet by 50 feet and shall be provided according to the following schedule. Please look at the third line in the chart. The Judson project is over 40,000 square feet, so they are required to provide 2 loading spaces, yet none have been included. It may appear we are all beating the same drum, but as we all know, the zoning code is the law of the city of Royal Oak. It was written to prevent problems for the applicant as well as the neighborhood in general. I also gave you a photo taken of a delivery within the past 2 weeks. You should note the truck is parked on Springer, the residential street to the north of the property. You can also see several Judson employees' cars parked on Springer as well. So not only is Judson Center asking to reduce the number of parking spaces, it would appear they are hoping no one noticed that the 2 other parking requirements, barrier-free and loading, were overlooked or omitted. Frankly, it is very clear that the size of the expansion is too large, and they have chosen to make the problem go away by asking you to not follow the city's zoning codes you have been charged with enforcing. I am asking you tonight to follow the code and instruct the Judson Center to work with their architect to come up with a better plan. Thank you very much.
No, I didn't. I stayed in my order. Also, it was on both sides. Just to get up a little bit. How about that? My name is Julie Brown, and my house also abuts up the Judson Center. I am going to speak tonight about allowed variance off-street parking. Your task is to find a way to look at both sides of an issue equally and try to solve difficult problems. And in this case, not only are you being asked to make a reduction from 225 spaces that Judson requires, but now you know you also have to deal with the 2 omitted categories of required parking, barrier-free spaces, and 2 loading spaces that were left out. The framers of the code knew that dilemma would come up, so they have given you some latitude. In the printout I handed you, I would direct your attention to the highlighted sections from 770-106 of the code, which gives you some flexibility. In fact, I'll go ahead and read the highlighted section as well. 770-106 off-street parking requirements, specifically flexibility in application. Waiver based on use. The zoning administrator may grant a waiver in cases where the applicant has sufficiently demonstrated that the minimum parking requirements of 770-107 are excessive for their use. Such waivers may be approved if no more than 10% of the required parking per 770-107 is being waived. Judson's application does not provide any proof to justify a reduction other than their own opinion. It has been established by planning and the zoning code that the site plan requires 225 conventional spaces. Even if you took advantage of the latitude to waive 10% of the required spaces or the ability to waive 22 spaces, as we know, barrier-free spaces are in addition to conventional, so they would not be subject to any waiver. Combining the 203 conventional and 11 barrier-free spaces, the site requires 214 total spaces, not the 177 they are requesting. When considering the additional problem caused by the 2 loading spaces being omitted, the only appropriate opinion would be to deny this variance and instruct the Judson Center and their architectural team to rework the site plan to conform with the Royal Oak zoning code. One more thing to help you understand our concerns. Even before the expansion, they are parking where they shouldn't be. Every Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 Judson employees park off the site on Springer, the residential street to the north of the property. And that is exactly why the zoning code was written, to stop commercial overflow into the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie Harmon, and I'm a 40-year resident of Yorba Linda, and my property backs up to the Judson Center. In the memorandum from the Planning Commission, they state the zoning requirements for how to make a decision for an appeal in 770-124E. While I know you know your responsibilities, when we look at the code and at the variance request, some words just jump off the page. The code requires that if a variance is granted, the property must be unique, extraordinary, and exceptional. On page 3, Planning's memo, the first sentence under number 7 decision, infers that Judson meets these criteria. It goes on to say if you enforce the code, that it would cause peculiar or exceptional practical difficulties to the owner of the property. It should be noted that in E1, use variances, it states the applicant must present evidence to show that if this chapter is applied strictly, unnecessary hardship to the applicant will result. Judson has produced no evidence to justify any of those 5 requirements because it doesn't exist. There is nothing unique about the Judson property. It is like nearly every other piece of property in the city. There's nothing extraordinary about the property. It has no pond or creek or wetland. It's a flat piece of dirt. There is nothing exceptional about the Judson property. It isn't too narrow, it isn't an odd shape. In fact, it's just a big rectangle. There is nothing on the property that is causing any, quote, practical difficulties or exceptional undue hardship for the owner. The only thing causing these practical difficulties and hardship is the proposed expansion is too dense. Remember, code says to approve a variance, the property must create the practical difficulty. It does not. Judson themselves created the hardship. You cannot cause your own hardship and ask for a variance to get you out of it. You have heard many points to back up the need for the correct amount of parking spaces. You know they omitted spaces for loading and did not add the barrier-free spaces to the required 225 spaces. This property would easily accommodate the required number of spaces if the expansion was designed to keep it to the right size for the property. Judson should not be allowed to create a situation where the parking spills over into our neighborhood residential streets. The expansion needs to be a size that allows their employees, patients, and visitors to park within their site and not overflow into the residential neighborhood. Given the facts regarding the code's parking rules and the rules given to you for granting variances, this variance must be denied or limited to 10%. They have one of the best architectural and engineering teams working on this project. I am confident that they can redesign and reimagine the expansion and make it even better by working within the code instead of ignoring it. Thank you.
I'm going to bring up my wheelchair if that's okay.
I did plant a new tree this year, so got it out.
You're organized.
What about that's a little cheaper than renting up all iPads or something?
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Fair enough.
Good evening, I'm Barb Schultz, and I also live on Yorba Linda behind the Judson Center. The last speaker discussed the first paragraph of the code regarding variances, pointing out why this variance cannot be granted based on the code. I'm addressing the second section of the same code, which discusses non-use variances. In the handout I gave you, please see item 2, quote, "The applicant must present evidence to show that if this chapter is applied strictly, practical difficulties will result to the applicant and that all 4 of the following requirements are met. A, that this chapter's restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. First, Judson did not provide the evidence as required. Nothing in this chapter prevents Judson from using this property for a permitted use. It is the size of the expansion that created the unreasonable number of parking spaces that they are asking to be waived. The code is based strictly on square footage, and they knew that when they designed it. Part B, quote, that the variance would do substantial justice to the applicant as well as to the other property owners in the district, and a lesser relaxation than that requested would not give substantial relief to the owner of the property or be more consistent with justice again to other property owners. Granting this variance would do an injustice to Judson patients by causing traffic snarls and aggravation from not having the correct number of spaces. Plus, granting the variance is not consistent with the neighborhood, nor does it give justice to the other property owners because cars will park on Springer and drive through our neighborhood. Part C, that the plight of the landowner is due to the unique circumstances of the property. The plight of the landowner is not in any way a result of any unique circumstances because there are none. It is simply the size of the expansion that causes conflict with the code. Part D, that the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. Like the last example, this one is also obvious. The alleged hardship has been created by people having an interest in the property. Judson hired the architects that designed the expansion. They know that the project must meet certain code requirements, yet together they created a plan that is so large that they need a 25% waiver in parking spaces, even though they knew that Royal Oak Code only allows for a maximum waiver of 10% and only if it can be justified. Code 770-124 calls for all 4 of the non-use requirements to be met. As none of the 4 have been met, this request for variance must be denied. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Gail Linden, and I do not live on Yorba Linda. I do not live on Springer. I live in Huntington Woods. I have served for 9 years on Huntington Woods ZBA. I know the requirements. I have served for 2 years out of 3 years on Huntington Woods Planning Commission. I know the requirements. This development does not meet those requirements. You all, and I was surprised that you didn't have it, because every time our ZBA meeting met, we handed out a booklet at the beginning of ZBA meetings so that people knew what the requirements were. Judson Center is building on 7.63 acres of land. They are overbuilding for what they are allowed to do. They have 5 other sites in the area that are in Royal Oak, Farmington Hills, Ann Arbor, Flint, and Warren. Some of that stuff can be handled there. They want sensory gardens. Make it smaller. They need parking spaces. Way too many of them. You know, as far as the other kinds of things, one thing that's never been brought up is talking about Greenfield and the driveway. Earlier when the applicant was up here, it was asked, there's one driveway going out on Greenfield. If you put the drawing back up on the board, there are 2 driveways going out on Greenfield. Okay? There's only one right now. Do you know that Greenfield is going to have a roundabout at Beverly and Normandy? It happens to be a county road. You're talking about, you know, egress going out onto Greenfield, which is a county road, from 2 locations, and then going up less than a half a mile to go on a roundabout. You also have 2 lanes coming northbound on Greenfield, stopping at the light at 13 Mile Road, going to 1 lane north of 13 Mile Road as it passes the Judson Center. Additionally, Judson Center said they are eliminating the walkways from Springer to the front of the 2 buildings that are there, that are going to be a medical building and something else. Did they say that they were eliminating the front doors? No. At the Planning Commission, they said that they were leaving the entrance on Springer facing, yet they're not going to allow you how to walk up to those. They need to move them to the backside where the parking is. It just isn't thought out. I learned the 4 requirements for a variance. The condition of the situation is unique and not shared by the neighboring properties in the same zone. 2, a variance would not be significantly detrimental to adjacent property owners or the surrounding neighborhood or community at large. 3, the practical difficulty was not created by the action of the applicant or either existed at the time of adoption or of the requirement which the variance is requested. And 4, the variance is the minimum necessary to permit reasonable use of land and buildings. I ask that you do your job here tonight and tell me which, if any, of those 4 do apply. Thank you.
Looks like I'm batting cleanup. My name's Mark Mueller. I'm here on behalf of Susan Bryloff, who does live on Yorba Linda and Springer, right there at the corner. And I'll be very quick, because you all know, and you've heard here tonight, what the zoning guidelines are for granting a non-use variance. So I'm not going to take time to state them. I'm just going to give the 4 reasons why this should not be granted. There's nothing in the parking requirements that prevents the Judson Center from using this property for the permitted purpose. They could reduce the size of the proposed buildings and increase the number of off-street parking spots, but they've just chosen not to do that. The variance does not do substantial justice. All of the burden, as we've heard tonight from these folks, would fall onto the neighborhood with increased traffic and parking as a result of overflow by not having enough off-street spots. There's no unique, extraordinary, exceptional conditions at the property. It's a big flat rectangle, okay? And the hardship's clearly self-created. The buildings are too big. Too much of the space has been dedicated to, nice to have, but not need to have uses. So for those reasons, I'd ask that you deny the requested parking variance. Thank you. Good night.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Yancock. I'm a resident of Royal Oak, and I graduated from Kimball High School in 1958, one of the first graduating classes. I had many friends that lived over in the Yorba Linda area, and I lived in South Royal Oak. And fortunately, I was able to move out to live on Yorba Linda, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. The area was pristine, it was quiet, it was a very nice place to grow up. And my kids grew up and spend time there. My grandchildren do on occasion. And I just feel from the amount of traffic that I've seen since I've been retired in the last 9 years, and the amount of traffic that goes through the area is unworldly for children, for bicycles and what have you. And I don't know anything more about the applications, requirements, and what have you. But I think with Springer and the amount of traffic that's there and the amount of traffic we get off of 13 Mile, cutting through our street and going around Yorba Linda and Springer, I think you should take a good look at it and keep Royal Oak, parts of Royal Oak, the way they were meant to be in the years past, as a nice community, not just being an area where commercial traffic is the name of the game and taxes are also the name of the game. Thank you.
Is there any other comments? All right. Before we go ahead, I know that a bunch of questions got brought up, and normally we don't have petitioner come back, but since there were so many questions regarding it, it would be nice if you were able to answer some of them. I had stuff regarding your business narrative, parents drop-off, ADA spaces, off-street loading zone, entrances on the south side of the Springer building. If you want to comment to any of those, feel free to, or all of them to help.
First two uses and help clients who are dropped off and.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say good evening to the zoning board and also to the residents. And I am Lenore Hardy Foster, President and CEO of Judson Center. And whenever we're looking at what we're doing, we have to make sure that the children, the families, and all of the adults that we serve are in the forefront. So I heard all of the questions, and I want to make sure that we're able to answer all of the concerns. One of the things about the Royal Oak campus, being there over 98 years, is being able to see the growth and number of people we serve. But the uniqueness in every program that we have is so different. If I take autism as an example, the children do not drive there. The children are dropped off. A part of our plan and what we're trying to do is to have a roundabout where they're dropped off and we have a staff meeting them, greeting them to bring them into the building. That's how it is all day. In the evening, the older children, when they get out of school, we have some staff that pick them up to bring them to the campus, or they're brought by their parents. So when I look at transportation of cars that need to be parked there, for the autism program, which is the largest program on that campus, cars are not parked, they drop off. They don't stay. Unless parents are coming in to meet with one of the staff, they will park and come in. But that's not something that happens throughout the day. When I think about our foster care and adoption program, we're proud to be a part of that work. That's the birth of Judson Center. Those staff are out in the field.
They come in, they check in the morning, but they provide home services. What we do on campus is visitation. We have parents, the biological parents, where we coordinate a time for them to come on site and meet with their children. The foster parent bring them in, and they have a visitation room, and they spend time with their child. That doesn't happen where we have 30 or 40 at the same time. You're talking about 2 or 3 families where that could happen, and they're there at the same time. Staff come in and they leave. So they're in the field, they're going into the homes because we have to go and check on the foster parent. We have to inspect the home. We have to make sure that that child that's placed there is being well taken care of. And it's with the adoption program. They're out in the field as well, trying to make sure we can find placement for the children. When I think about our vocational supported employment program, this is a program, and I do agree, we have vehicles that are parked there. We have 7 passenger vans that transport the staff that are driving the vehicle and transporting participants to a work site. They don't stay there. They are dropped off. Some of those participants lives in group homes, and they are dropped off by their group home. When they're dropped off, they load one of our vans, and they're taking them to a work site. And a lot of those staff, they are job developers, and they're out meeting with employers, trying to make sure we can secure other jobs for the people that we serve that are disabled. And they should be like all of us, be able to have an opportunity to work. And that's what that program is doing. What we're looking at, and something that I have to say that I'm very proud of, is a program that we currently have right now that operates out of Warren, Michigan. Our largest integrated care practice consists of behavioral health, primary health care. We provide behavioral health at the Royal Oak campus right now. But one of the things that we do know is people that are diagnosed with mental illness, their life expectancy is 25 years less than some without that. I'm sure you hear quite often, you read in the paper about integrated care. What we want to do on that Royal Oak campus is to bring in, and I have to say that is so correct about Warren and the partner that we brought in over 4 years ago to provide primary health care service. I must say, being a part of behavioral health for all my life, we're not physicians. We're not medical doctors. We're not the nurses that provide medical treatment. You partner. You bring in the people that specialize and has those credentials to do that work. So yes, we have a partner that will be there at that location. We providing behavioral health. They are, the specialty is our program. It's just like if you outsource and bring people in, that's what we would do there to make sure that it's integrated care. The thing about it is, when you look at what's going on around us and how we're trying to make sure we can structure that location, I care about the residents. I've heard about Springer Street. I want the cars off of the street. And that's the reason we are in support of closing it, so our staff will park on the inside of the campus. And everyone that comes, if they're coming for the medical clinic or for behavioral health and they have to park, they will have the parking to do that, but not on Springer. They will be directed to come into the campus to make sure those things are done. So yes, I'm proud of 98 years and where we are today. And think about that campus and the need that's out there for children, adults, and families is far greater today than it has ever been. Thank you.
Did you want to make any comments regarding the loading zone and the ADA spaces?
Yes, so the ADA spaces that are currently shown meet the number that we are required to have with the number that we're showing of standard spaces. And then regarding loading and unloading, we have talked about, and there is a place to load and unload. It's actually back at the facilities area and the back of staff parking area. So we were anticipating that anything being dropped off is actually in the corner. It's like near the garage outcropping, that corner right below the open lake field plate area. There's a little garage, 2 overhead rolling doors are being shown. Drop off happens in that corner for any goods or services. Yep, where that sidewalk is. That area, that corner right there.
So that will be the planned loading unloading zone?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Different than what's currently now that people are complaining about? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Was there any other questions that I missed that the public had?
I guess I just misunderstood or wasn't clear on what you were saying about the handicap parking spaces. Are you saying that you've got the handicap parking spaces in addition, so like the 178 or 79 are just the standard spaces?
179 includes all spaces on the site, including ADA currently.
Okay. All right. I just was trying to understand that. And then, trying to think if I had anything else. I didn't hear anybody address anything about the business plan. I was a little curious about that, although okay. I'm sorry. I misheard it then. I actually had a question for Mr. or Joseph when we get a chance.
But if you want to expound upon the business plan more than what you've already stated.
Yes, so even when we first started thinking about this, we definitely needed to develop a business plan just to make sure that we all could understand what we were trying to accomplish and how we're going to do that. So yes, we developed a business plan. We met with Stan Tech. They worked along with us with that business plan, but internally we looked at every program. We looked at the campus, what things we need to do. We also wanted to make sure that we could assess how many more children and families would we be able to serve. We have waiting lists right now, so yes, we did. We put in place a business plan.
I was just going to say, to expand on the ADA or accessible parking spaces, it's not an addition to the ordinance, it's more of a ratio in the Michigan Building Code. So like, for example, I have the code up here. If it's 201 to 300, 7 of those are required to be accessible. It's not an addition to what the ordinance states. It's a ratio per the building code.
And then just one more item to add. Architecturally, we are going to work to bring the face of the Unit 2 and Unit 3 to the inside of the campus. We did hear a lot of feedback about that. We've been looking at our plans, and our intent is to add some signage and some features and change the door and entry and indication of that to the south side of both Unit 2 and Unit 3.
And I assumed all the parking that you put up there is designed to get those cars off of Springer and parked right there.
Yep.
Okay. Because I haven't. I'm not as familiar with the area, so it didn't. It looks like enough parking based on the pictures that I've seen and the Google Street View and my quick drive-by. But how many staff work out of there? Out of each of those buildings, or will when they're renovated, I guess is my question.
So in total, probably at any peak time, there will be 90 to 100 employees. Total that would be their home office. It's roughly about 135. But
I just meant building 2 and 3. I'm sorry.
Building 2 and 3. So building 2 and 3. Building 2 currently has, as far as employees, there are probably about 25 employees.
Okay.
Building 3 will probably be about, here again, I want to say building 3 is probably going to be about 30 employees, 28 to 30.
But you said previously the staff parking is not at those locations, it's more in the staff parking area, more on the south side.
Yes.
Those parking spots by that is meant for the people more so to go there.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry.
What are and maybe I missed it here, or maybe when you mentioned it, what are the uses going to be for building 2 and 3?
So building 2 is vocational services, supported employment. And so that's where we provide soft skill trainings to individuals with a disability, young adults and older adults, and they are dropped off and they're taken to a work site. And we have staff that stay with them at the work site. And they come back late in the afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock. They come back and they're picked up by their family members, or if they live in a group home, they're there to pick them up. And Unit 3, that will become behavioral health and primary health care. So we will have a total exam rooms of,
I think it's like 4 exams rooms and 6 counseling rooms.
Right, in total there are 8. So what we are going to be doing is providing traditional counseling. So someone who's diagnosed with a mental illness, they'll be meeting with their therapist or they'll be meeting with the psychiatrist. And on the other side, this is where you have integrated care. So it's like a shared waiting room, lobby area. And you don't know behind which of the areas might be behavioral health. The other may be primary health care, where they're there for their physical examination, or if they are sick with the flu or whatever the illness may be, they're being seen by the medical doctors.
One more follow-up question on that. So around those 2 buildings seems to be the least amount of parking of the whole site. Do you feel that that's sufficient for the uses of that building? Because looking at these, I mean, if somebody can't find a spot there, it would be a much shorter walk to zip around the corner and park on Springer and walk across the lawn than it would be to walk from one of the lots further down Greenfield or somewhere like that. So, I mean, do you have any comments on that?
It is a 2-way drive and both ways in and out to both of access to those other parking lots that are already on the site instead of going out into Greenfield and then
But
around.
I'm just, people usually want to take the shortest path to where they're going, especially in the winter or,
Understood.
raining or something like that. I'm just wondering if you feel that what is there next to those buildings will accommodate all of the need that's going on in those 2 particular buildings at any one time.
We think it will, and I'm going to tell you why. The clinic, most of the people we serve do not have their own transportation. They will be taking the bus route to get there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Clinton.
There was one comment about maybe the buildings were too large for the site, but I assume, Mr. Murphy, per staff assessment, that the buildings meet the lot coverage requirements, so they're not over-designed for the site. I would assume to be part of your analysis.
In this particular zoning district, there is no maximum lot coverage requirement for a building.
And then I guess just observation number 2, there's a significant amount of green space, which I believe per the write-up is sensory area for the children. But to me, it's almost like a land banked area that if in the future, if you feel there is a parking need or a potential parking issue, you could provide more in the future if needed.
In the future, we could if needed, but we really are hoping to use those spaces to help out with our program and patients and clients. But potentially, yes.
If there is a parking shortage.
Mr. Gavin.
I think one more thing I wanted to raise, and this is a question for Mr. Murphy, was the site plan review and the business plan, that would have been under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, would it not? Or would that have been a staff issue that would have been handled in review?
I'm sorry, which elements are you referring to?
The need to submit a business plan as part of the site plan review for the site? Because site plan review is not under our purview. It's really more an issue for staff or for Planning Commission and not for the zoning board.
Well, the petitioner has described their operations in order to, on their part, to convince you of the granting the variance based on their operational aspects. So they verbalize that to you.
Right.
The Planning Commission did not require, did not hold up the process, didn't feel that it was a necessary element in their determination to grant site plan and special land use approval. They didn't feel as though they were missing any component in writing or not to make that determination.
There, thanks.
Any other questions for
I have one.
Oh, sorry.
And I apologize if this has already been gone over, but I guess, so you're giving a rationale for why there won't be parking, people are going to be getting dropped off and the cars aren't going to be staying there. Why doesn't that apply currently where we see that there is overflow to Springer?
So my understanding, and Lenore, you can fill in here, is that a lot of times the internal lot is not fully utilized and not fully busy. There's times we've been over there and it looks like there's no one being serviced, but in fact services are going on and in full effect. We feel that some of that may be the convenience access to the building as they currently are. Lenore, have you heard of any other items that contribute to that? Some of it also may be access to the park that is right there, so that's also public access and parking for that as well. I'm not sure what the mix of actual users for Judson Center is for those cars that are parked there.
So when I think about right there on Springer, the vocational program, so with staff and what I like about with the redevelopment plan is it changes the direction of the programming. It brings them on the inside, of the campus. And I think what it is right now is where staff may look at convenience to pull up right there, right at the building and park their car and go in, even though we say we want you to park on the inside. It's hard to monitor and make sure. This will bring them there, because if it's closed off, then they won't be able to anyway. So that's what we're looking to accomplish.
Mr.
Are you closing it off besides removing the sidewalks? I mean, is there a barrier?
There was an entire drive there that we've eliminated.
Yeah.
Okay, but people could still walk to the buildings.
Yes, anyone could walk
Right,
to the
okay,
building.
that's what I was asking, if there was any kind of...
We are going to improve the landscape buffer there as well.
Okay.
When we do the revised plan, we're limiting the sidewalks, increasing some of the landscape buffer, and we'll also be implementing some on-site signage to help redirect people as well.
Okay.
Mr. Kevin?
Two questions, and one might be for staff. I don't know. The Springer, I didn't see any no parking signs, correct? That is available for street parking? Okay. And then the other question I had, because we've been talking a lot about parking and all that, but one of the other concerns I heard from some of the residents in the area was people driving through, specifically I would imagine on Yorba Linda, just to, because it's convenient to go that way rather than have to deal with Greenfield or whatever. Is there anything you guys are doing, working with your employees? And I know that may not be all your people. It could be, people doing drop-offs or your parents or group homes or things like that. But is there anything you're doing working with employees or, people doing those drop-offs to try and shift them away from that? I know there's only so much you can do, but I'm curious what you are doing.
So right now, most of them, when I think about the drop-off for the autism program, and they're being dropped off even right now. And what we learned through pandemic, we started at the very beginning, so parents could not enter thinking about social distancing, and it really works with the children just being dropped off. They continue to drop off to this day, and usually when they leave, most of them enter off of Greenfield, and they usually just enter, drop them off, and then they exit back on the Greenfield. Now, one of the things what I can't comment on is how many of them are turning right onto Springer, because that I don't know. I do know that most of our traffic, even including our employees, their travel route is usually 13 Mile or Greenfield.
Yeah,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to add to that. Excuse me. And we actually met with the road commission ahead of time and everything and worked through these connections with them, and they were in agreement with removing the one to Springer. The main thing that it creates is the potential cut through that comes down from 14 head south that they're alluding to. It was easy for people to do that because then they could turn right into the site, into the existing drive that split those two buildings, so they could have an easy access point. But now people aren't going to want to do that because they would have to turn left on the Greenfield and make a left into the site. People don't, that's not a natural turning movement. So what that does is forces anybody to come around and do rights in off of 13 Mile, rights in off of Greenfield. And so we did work on driveway layout. They wanted us to make sure that the driveway that we do have shown off of Greenfield is a certain proximity away from the intersection, which we exceed those requirements. So we have the blessing from the road commission. So we try to be proactive and get with them ahead of time instead of having you guys to deal with that later. So I just want to throw that point out there.
Great. And then architecturally with our building, we are bringing a feature to the site, and we're hoping that also brings a presence and makes the Greenfield entry more appealing as well. So we're hoping that that also helps establish that as the main point for clients to use as well, which they would be directed to.
I'm glad that you brought up, this is the existing site drawing as it stands now, and will you zoom in on the Springer entrance? You know, the fact of the matter is that's really currently the only place in order to use those two buildings that people are allowed to park. They're encouraged to park in the driveways, and then those driveways are so small, right, that they're, by nature, they have to overflow into Springer. So with these changes, we're trying to fix all that. There's also, you know, an adjacency thing here for anybody that needs to be in these two buildings at the north end of the site. You'd have to walk across the entire existing site to get to it from the existing parking lot, south parking lot. So, you know, people are going to go where it's the easiest path, and right now that's on Springer. So we're trying to, you know, remedy all that.
Yep.
Mr. Reddy?
I had a question for Mr. Murphy. So they're talking about a revised site plan. Does that have to get approved by the planning commission again?
What components?
Yeah, what do you mean revised?
The walkway.
Oh, you said you were revising the site plan regarding the barrier on Springer. Putting some sort of landscape barrier on Springer and putting the doors on the other side, I believe.
There's already some doors on the other side, but we're talking about some like architectural awning or element or something to re-emphasize that. And also like signage on the door, make sure that when you come in, you're coming into a lobby space on the south side. But as far as like the floor plan changes, that doesn't really change or vary from that. We are already proposing some landscape, which was approved, but we could increase, we wouldn't take away, you know, anything that we're already showing on the current landscape proposal. And I think we already had some trees and plantings along that way, but with the removal of that sidewalk, we would like fill it in with more barriers landscape wise, but nothing too crazy different from what we currently have proposed.
What it was more of a request of what things we could do to help. It wasn't like you have to do this in order to proceed, but we
No, I was just wondering if that needs.
Let's take a look at the site plan on the screen that shows the sidewalk to Springer, and so everyone's on the same page.
If you could go to the completed landscape plan, that'll show the plantings the best. So that'll be like an.
And we can zoom in on that.
Yep, keep
and
going.
the comment is modifying the site plan to eliminate those internal sidewalks on their own private property in order to try and alleviate some of the appeal of people parking on the street and using that proposed sidewalk. So if they did eliminate that sidewalk and put in additional landscaping, if we can see that, yes, then it would not require, we'd be able to do that administratively. So if that's a voluntary offer that they're making to make change to the site plan to alleviate or appease some of the comments that they've heard, we can address that as an administrative modification.
Yeah, we're already showing new trees actually in front of and in place of where the existing drive was removed. We would remove those two little ancillary arms of the sidewalk, and then we'd probably, put some of the bush plantings more along where the existing sidewalk was removed, or sidewalk was removed.
Can you show that drawing?
Any other questions?
Yes. I think this is for staff also. One of the residents referred to the off-street parking requirements in the code, the flexibility in application, and saying we're limited to 10% of the parking spaces in our flexibility. That refers to you, doesn't it, as an administrative decision? And we have a lot more flexibility than that, correct?
Yes, that's if you were, the case prior, there was a comment about what if the other tenant space that was approved for retail and needed four parking spaces, if it became a use that required much more parking, if it was within that 10% tolerance, we'd be able to approve it administratively. But if it required 4 more parking spaces, then it would need to come to you, and you utilize your non-use variance criteria in order to make that determination.
There's no other questions. The only question I have then is, do you want us to proceed tonight or wait till next month when we might have a full board, or we might not?
We're going to continue.
Okay. Then we'll bring it to this side of the board, and any comments and or motions. Don't everyone all jump at once. Anyone? Comments even? Mr. Cladwell?
Not a motion yet, but just as an observation or just some comments. I agree with one of the residents that the site is not unique or extraordinary, but in my opinion, the use is. I mean, it's more of a use issue than the site itself. And our company has designed other behavioral centers for a company called Blossom, so I'm fully aware of the drop-off situation with their children that have autism as well. So that truly is a case where the children are dropped off versus the need for all the parking. So I'm familiar with that as well, so I do understand that. So again, for me, it's more about the use versus the site being unique.
Do you guys want to take off one of the easier ones instead of? Since it has 2 of them, go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
I'll move to approve the 5 foot of the maximum driveway width of 30 feet.
Okay, second by Mr. Clark. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
I think that one, Mr. Brickle actually hit that one pretty well, which just talking about where it's measured. I just look at the tightness of the turn on that drive approach, and it seems necessary to have it flare out that much. So it seems fine to me. That in terms of, it's a minimal ask just to try and make that a safe condition. So I am in favor of that one.
Mr. Klatt, anything to add?
No, nothing further to add. That makes sense to me. And they also had a conversation with the county regarding the driveway location, so I'm comfortable with that. And for the first comment I had this evening, they closed the drive off to the north, which is huge in my opinion.
Any other comments? All right. I too will be in support of this motion. It's making that driveway more safer than what it would be if you had to pinch it down. And it is unique in that circumstance where that drive is hitting the roads to require that. So I have no problem with this motion as requested. If there's no other comments, we'll move to vote on this motion. Granting variance B. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? All right, that one carries unanimously. Okay, now the next one. Who would like to speak or make a motion regarding A?
I guess I have a comment about the parking on Springer. There is an apartment complex across the road from Springer on Greenfield Road. And it looks like they don't have a lot of parking there, so I don't know if it's appropriate to fully blame all of the parking on Springer Avenue to them. Unless you're standing out there and watching where people are walking from. I don't really know that.
Comments or motions?
Well, with regard to what you just said, I think that the applicants addressed that issue pretty well by saying what they're doing is trying to bring the traffic in and eliminate any problems that might be on Springer.
So is that a motion?
Not yet.
Mr. Klatt.
I'll make a motion to approve the parking.
Okay, Mr. Gavin seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Klatt.
Again, to me, it's like I mentioned before, it's the use. And in this case, I don't think the use fits the perfect mold within the parking ordinance here. So in some cases, I think it's actual versus, it's required versus actual, and I think they got the parking right here. It meets their needs. There is additional area in the future. If, like I mentioned, land banking, in the future, they need to gain more parking. If they feel there's a shortage, they can do that. But I feel it's parked right. And I also feel that the issue along Springer has been cut down because of that driveway location. So for those reasons, I'll support. Or need the motion.
Yeah, this, with respect to parking in our city, we've said multiple times on this board before that some of our parking calculations they err on the cautious side, if you will. And I know it was considered to revisit those not long ago at the Planning Commission, but they opted to kind of stick with this system, which we've been using, which is, they feel that we've been pretty fair with the ability to get parking variances where needed for situations. So I understand why they stuck with it. It still doesn't change my opinion that the parking restrictions are still on the high side. So with that, I think it would unreasonably prevent them from using it because, as Mr. Klatt pointed out, I think they've reasonably demonstrated that their needs are less based on the particular use of this property. And I work with some child caring institutions, so I similar to Mr. Klatt, I've seen how those kind of uses go. The variance, obviously would do substantial justice to the applicant, and I know we have heard from many of the neighboring property owners that they are not happy with it, but I think that it will do justice to them. I think it will improve the situation. I think it will address some of the concerns they have, and some of the concerns in terms of moving the parking, and shifting and focusing off of the access from Springer. And then I would really encourage the petitioner to work with everybody that they work with to ask them to not drive through the neighborhoods, but I understand that that's not something that's within their control. In terms of the plight of the landowner being due to the unique circumstances of the property, I agree with Mr. Klatt. I think it is a use issue. The property is, yes, it is a rectangular, fairly standard property, but the particular use that they're putting it to, and the corner that it's on, and the way that those neighborhood streets are laid out, I think those cause those kind of problems. And then the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. That one, the way I read that is that it's more a hardship that's created by how overly cautious our zoning ordinances in terms of parking, as well as they are limited by the size on that property. The number of parking spots that would be required by our ordinance, that building that they're putting in there does meet all our other requirements for building that structure on that site, but the usage in terms of parking is going to be lower. So I feel that we have met all of the requirements for non-use variances, and I am in favor.
Any other comments? Mr. Reddy.
I disagree. I think I'm going to be opposed to this. I think it's just too many spaces. I don't think it's necessarily unique. And when we're talking about the, kids getting dropped off, one of the things is it's an outpatient. It's listed as outpatient medical, so that was like 10 spots. Well, there's still 30-some spots short. And so I think some of the other things that might mitigate, like the bus service and ride sharing, to me doesn't seem to apply in this case. So I'm going to be opposed because I don't think the other criteria are met.
Mr. Moore.
I'll also be opposed. I don't believe that this is providing substantial justice to the other property owners in the district. I mean, there's some improvements there, but obviously we've heard from them tonight, and they're all aware of those improvements. And then I also, I can't say that the alleged hardship is not being created by any person presently having an interest in the property. I mean, the buildings that they're building in what is now mostly green space, I mean, they could have brought them to an efficient size to meet all of our requirements.
Other comments? Well, I'll make first I'm sort of in favor of this. In fact, I'm surprised your comment regarding the bus because of just commenting about Ito's thing with the bus and with her comment saying people come by the bus as well as get dropped off by shuttles. This is a unique circumstance. Luckily, I've been an architect, so I had experience with doing medical office buildings as well as hospitals. I'll give you an example. If you look at just the corridor width in their design, their corridor width is 18 to 20 feet wide. A normal medical office building is about 6 feet wide. Normal hospital is about 10 feet wide. That extra square footage alone, even though it's not taking up any use at all by staff, it's just there to help the people walk through, is hurting them in their unique circumstance to cause them to have more parking. They have this huge village space right there, which is almost like a play area to help them with their staff. You don't have that in a normal medical office building or a normal hospital, or even their large sensory rooms that they have for their autism kids. This is a unique circumstance that causes them to have much larger things. In fact, if you look at their occupant load, if they were going by code of how many their occupancy is for, their full build-out occupant load would be for well over 1,000 people. And she said her staff at full use in phase 2 would only be at 150. So that tells you how much of wasted space they have there for their patients. The architects, just because, and Jeff can go along with this, we get trained. The last thing we want to do is waste space, waste parking area, because not only does that waste sustainability, because now you're making more hardscape upon the earth, but it also wastes the client's money of, hey, now I got to pay for parking stuff that no one's ever going to use. So I know that they've done their due diligence working with her business plan as to not be there for the future, but also not be wasteful now in the present. So because of that, I don't have a problem with what they've asked for, because I'm pretty sure they've planned for not having that. And by closing off the access to Springer and working more with their staff to prevent that, I think that creates more of the harmonious thing that will help with the people around the neighborhood. And there might still be a problem because, as Ms. Grant stated, who knows, some of that stuff may be from the apartments. By definitely moving that loading zone to the garage now, there should be no excuse. There should be any loading on Springer at all now. So I think they've alleviated a lot of the concerns that were brought up. Yes.
I too am in favor of this. I will be in favor. I think one of the biggest neighborhood problems where they're talking about the parking on Springer, that they've really addressed that by turning the buildings facing the other direction, closing off any access right there to keep everything within side of this campus, and plus pushing everything out onto Greenfield. I think those are the two major concerns that everyone here in the neighborhood has had, and I think this really addresses that, along with the fact that they do have room to expand for more parking if they need it. For that reason, I'll be in approval.
I certainly understand and sympathize with the residents who live around there. But what I'm hearing mostly is that they're concerned about increased traffic. And that's not before us. The only issue before us is the parking and whether there's adequate parking. And I think based on the business model that was explained to us, that there probably is adequate parking, and this will fix any parking issues that existed before. And this decision's already been made that this is an appropriate use for the property, so we can't say that they shouldn't be expanding the way they're expanding. We can only say whether or not there's enough parking. And that's why I think I'm going to be voting in favor of the parking variance.
Any other comments? Ms. Grant?
I'll comment. I'm also going to be in favor of this. I think they explained what their parking needs are, and I'm always in favor of not building more parking lot than is required. I prefer keeping as much green space as possible, so I'm in favor.
All right. Unless there's any other comments, since we've all spoken, we'll move to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Opposed?
No.
Okay. The motion carries. You've been granted. Best of luck, and please work with your neighbors. As you can see, they are very worried about... No, you have to wait till public comment at the end, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Best of luck to you. Next up is case number 22-10-32, 517 Elm Street Court. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Murphy. Yep, I have no problem with waiting a few minutes on that. It's true, it's not. It's nothing else.
It's always fun when there's 3 items on the agenda and you think, oh, this will be quick.
Yeah, we'll be home.
I thought that too.
I thought I'd be home by 8:30.
I know this game.
A little bit. It's 9 o'clock already? Oh my God.
Yeah, that will be helpful. Closing the door.
Now, why did I lose this?
Alrighty, Mr. Murphy.
This site should look familiar to 97.
I think all of you. Yes, the petitioner was here in March, and they were granted variances in order to do additions to their existing house. They were going to demolish, the petitioner was going to demolish the existing detached garage and build a front entry attached garage and do a 2-story addition to the existing house. The petitioner has elected not to proceed forward with the variances, the design drawing that you saw in front of you and its associated variances. He did submit recently for a building permit which highlighted something different. As you can see, the drawing shows a 2-story side yard addition and a new front porch. So there's no more attached garage, and the existing detached garage remains as is. The revised drawings, they're substantially different than the design that you saw back in March. And so staff didn't want to take the liberty to assume that the board would have granted the variances based on the 2 different design drawings. And so unfortunately, the petitioner is back to seek a variances based on the different design. And as you can see, if we can zoom in slightly, that yellow hatched outline area is the side yard addition, and it is in line with the front plane of the house. And the existing home has a front yard setback, an odd front yard setback at that, but it has a front yard setback of 73.5 feet. And that addition is in line with it. So the addition does not meet the maximum allowable front yard setback of 50 feet. So any addition to that structure needs to result in the addition being no more than 50 feet. The addition is in line, so the addition results in a non-conforming front yard setback. It's expanding the non-conforming structure in a non-conforming way. So the petitioner is seeking a variance to alter the non-conforming structure in a non-conforming way and to waive 23.5 feet of the maximum allowable 50-foot front yard setback.
All right.
I'm a little confused here. Are the prior variances dropped that we granted?
They're still applicable, so if for some reason the petitioner changed their mind and wanted to resubmit drawings, obviously he's gone through a lot of design work, effort, expense, and the expense of coming back here and time delay. So I'll leave it up to him, but I presume that that March approved design is no longer on the table.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right. Well, welcome back. Please state your name and your case.
I'm Brian Latula. My wife was here in March. You guys remember her? So we decided that after getting quotes and all, everything we love the design our architect did, but it just wasn't going to be feasible. And we learned that our garage had a variance for it, so it can actually stay and we can improve it. That was a big factor before. We thought that if we touched it, if we improved it, we were gonna have to just tear it down and start over, you know, and make it, you know, or either get a variance for it or not. But, so yeah, we decided just to do the side yard addition that was, it's the same size as the one that was in the last proposal. It's just, I changed I ended up doing the design other than the architect just to change the, you know, the slope of the roof and stuff. And then just not touch the garage at all. So we're just asking for that, yeah, that front yard setback, just to be able to do that side yard. Yeah.
Any questions for the petition? No? All right. Well, I'd ask if there's well, I'll ask you in a moment. Anyone for public comment? None? Okay. Do you want us to proceed with,
Yes.
all right. Bring it to this side. Mr. Gavin.
I was in favor before, and I'm in favor again. I move to approve the variance as requested.
Mr. Klatt, seconds. Go ahead.
I think I supported before and I'll support again.
Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
I don't even know if I have it. Can I just reference my thoughts from the prior meeting? No, it's fine. This is, I mean, talk about unique properties. I mean, seriously. So, you know, it's back there. It's just a weird layout, and it is what it is. So, I mean, and plus the house is where it is. It's just flush with what's existing. For those reasons, I don't have any issues. I think it's fine, and I think it'll meet all of our requirements for non-use variances.
Mr. Klatt?
Yeah, not much more to add. I mean, it's existing non-conforming condition. You didn't build the house in that location. You didn't build the detached garage in that location. It's existed in this way for years. You're looking to simply expand it. It'll have no negative impact on the neighborhood. They're used to that condition. And it'll look more attractive. And it's generally hidden behind the garage anyway. So whatever you're building is from the public way is generally concealed.
Although
So
you can't really see it anymore.
no, so no issue with what you're doing, and I'm in support of it.
All right. Any other comments? All right, I too will be in support of it for all the things that have already been spoken for. If there's no other comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Congratulations. Best of luck this time. Sure.
Moving forward, if I am to do anything else to my house, is there a way to get a variance that would set that front property line where it is? Or do I have to come pay every time?
Didn't we do that last time?
It's based on your design. If this design somehow gets modified somewhat during the building permit process, and it's very similar to what the board just granted, then you wouldn't have to come back.
Okay. I just mean
But there's no carte blanche approval, no. Sorry.
Okay.
Just don't build anything in front.
Okay, well, thank you.
Good luck.
All right, moving on to other business. Their meeting scheduled for religious holidays for 2023.
Thank you. So as you may know, all boards are required to review upcoming meeting schedules to ensure that no meetings for the upcoming year have any direct conflicts with religious holidays. So staff has provided a draft meeting schedule for 2023 with religious holiday dates that may pose potential conflicts listed. And the board has the authority to determine if there are any such conflicts and can select alternate meeting dates if they deem there may be a potential conflict. But if the board is comfortable with the meeting dates as set, there is a suggested motion to keep the schedule in place, which would still be the second Thursday of each month. Thank you.
Well, is there any concerns regarding any of those dates from anyone here?
No issue.
All right. Do we need to make a motion to approve this?
Yes.
Yes.
There's
just motion. Go ahead, Ms. Zukin.
I will move that we retain our meetings on the second Thursday of every day, every month, having considered the holiday schedule presented.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Reddy. Okay. Any discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't think so. All right, that's done. Okay.
Are we done?
Now then, general public comment.
He's here.
Well, he's not here in the
Well,
room,
he's
so.
not, yeah, technically, he's not here.
If there's no general public comments, I guess then, do we have the mystery motion then?
There it is.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I don't know who won that one.
I said it first.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, carries.